Look at the amount of Loctite that was used in here.
As a percentage of 42 items, we're 10% done this build, everybody. Woo! Well, fellas, it is the beginning of day 4 here, and we are getting a little bit reorganized, more organized by making the old cardboard master list. Every build needs a cardboard master list, I think you'd agree, and this is a pretty decent one. I think there's 42 items on here, and the last one, or the second last one, is assemble exterior, which of course we could break down into many small things if we wanted to, but we're gonna leave that till the end so that the big payoff of this thing looking finished will be at the end. So the reason we made this list is because, as you would have seen in the previous episode, we were trying to do things like we were trying to finish the whole engine bay and get the car started. That was going to be like the payoff of last episode, is getting the car started. But as we got deeper into that, we realized there were lots of little things that were going to prevent us from getting it started. So we need to rethink how we're going to approach this build, and basically we need to be able to jump around more freely from job to job, because with the job like we were trying to get it started, we realized that's not going to happen. Oh my God, that ruins our concept for the episode. Let's just not think about it in that way anymore. Let's just get jobs done in a day-by-day fashion. It's not going to be like a target of finishing anything by the end of a particular day. The target is finishing the whole build by the end of the build, and that's as simple as we can make it. So we're going to move around and just tick things off the list that makes sense. And if we get stuck on a job because we have to order a part, then we'll skip that job and move to the next one. And when that part shows up, we'll get back to it and we'll tick it off the list then. So there'll be a lot of jumping around. It's going to be a little chaotic. It's not the way we like to do things, but I think because this build is so expansive and a little bit confusing because there's so much to do, we're just going to think of it as a master list, scratch things off the list, and when there's nothing left, we'll go to the dyno, we'll go to the racetrack, we'll drive it on the street, we'll do all those cool things. Speaking of which, this is the OE drive shaft off of Toyota Celica. This is a 46-year-old drive shaft, and the center carrier bearing here, you can see, is pretty badly pooched. So I asked Jake Langer, who is a first-gen Celica expert. He rebuilds these things all day long, and he sent me a link to this part, which is aftermarket. Obviously, it's not OE, which is a bit of a bummer, but hopefully it'll last well. And you can see it's the same, other than it has these nuts welded on here, which will zap off, and maybe we'll open the slot up a bit so we have a bit of adjustability. But otherwise it looks dimensionally correct. So the question now is, how do we swap this on here? And oh, by the way, for those of you wondering, yes, I did put a one-piece excessive manufacturing draft shaft on the car initially when we did the beam swap. And that's because Moose and I just assumed that this one wouldn't fit. But then in talking to some Celica people, I got to know the community better over time. They were like, why didn't you just use the OEM one? And I was like, I just assumed it wouldn't fit, but it does. The slip yoke's the same size as the Beam's J160 transmission, and it's even the correct length. We tested it for slip yoke engagement, and we've got plenty of engagement there. So, and the beauty of a two-piece setup is you do isolate the noise, vibration, and harshness a lot better with a center bearing like this than you do with a one-piece. Typically with one pieces, you can pick up bad vibrations at like certain engine speeds or certain, engine speeds basically, where with this you won't. So I wanted to go with the setup that will reduce the chance of us having any kind of vibrations through the driveline. As you can see, we've unbolted the two halves here, and then there's a nut and washer that goes on the spline shaft here, which we gunned off, which I'll explain why you shouldn't do that in a moment. And then this literally just slides off. And look at the condition of this stuff. Arizona, man, it's incredible. If this was Canadian, it would be rusted on and seized on, but nope, just slides right off there. And there's no nut, no rust at all on that barrier carry surface.
Show people that thing. Like, it was trash. Look at it, it's like ovalized.
Yeah, yeah. Like, look how out of center that is there.
It's bad news.
Yeah,
Good thing you decided to do that, DT.
Yeah, that would have been a bad time for sure. I mean, the rubber's all cracked and aged out too. So what happened here is we gunned this nut off, which you can see was staked, and Pete was very patiently trying to unstake it. And I was like, stop being a wuss, just put it in the vise and gun it off, which we did. And then of course the staked part stripped the nut, and I don't think damaged the threads.
There's no threads,
luckily,
it just damages the nut threads.
It kind of destroyed the nut. Not the end of the world, but unstake your nuts, everybody. That's words to live by from the old DP. Well, since we couldn't finish the prop shaft, we've moved on to trying to fit up the e-brake cables to the rear calipers. And if you go back to season 2 or 3, when we installed this rear big brake kit from Fast Brakes on the Celica, we had an issue where you can see it has this actually very clever mechanical system to engage the brake pads on the rears for the e-brake. So the cable comes through here, hooks onto here, and then when you pull on the handle, it squeezes these two levers together and squeezes the pads onto the rotor. And however, you can also see that we machined a bunch of metal off of here because it was hitting on the inside of the work wheels. I think now that we're running a 25, we may even end up running 30 mil spacer in the rear, that this is going to clear, but I'm not certain. So we want to do a test fit, but the plot is thickened because if you look inside the caliper, this lever is held on to these little silver brackets with these tiny little silver bolts that we stripped when initially removing them. So now we can't get them back out again because there's some Loctite on them. So what I'm gonna do is actually just tape this in here in the right position. Then we can put it on the car, put the wheel on, and see if this is clearing with the wheel spacers on there before we spend an hour trying to get those two little strip bolts out of there. Well, the good news is it clears. So with the magic of a 25 mil spacer, all our problems have been solved, except for those two stripped bolts, which are not going to be fun to get out of there. We're going to have to like try to file a groove in them maybe to get a flathead screwdriver on them. It's not going to be fun. Maybe we drill the caps off them entirely, but then how do we get the stud? It's not even fun to think about.
Whoever took this apart, it was either Dave, Ken, or Moose.
Well, you know I don't do any work, so it was Ken or Moose.
Right, and this feels like a Moose job because everything is over tightened, which is why now, as Dave mentioned, this is stripped. So you can see this is like gone. And then this is what I find comical here. So this is your bracket that bolts the caliper on. Look at the amount of Loctite that was used in here. So it went down the threads and it ended up all over this. Like, look at it. This is insane, DP. Look how much.
It does seem moose-like, doesn't it?
Look how much Loctite. Somebody just like doused it.
I'm going with Moose on that. I'm going with Moose.
Anyways, I don't want to have to try to notch these because I know what's going to happen. We're going to notch it and it's still not going to come out because there's a ton of Loctite. So I have thought up of an idea here, Dave. Okay. And what it requires is my new little pry bars. Ooh. Check these guys out. Fancy. These I saw on Chris Fix's channel. And I watched this. We're going to go like this, DP. We're going to go like this.
Yeah.
We're going to bend it back.
Okay.
We're gonna bend both back.
Yeah.
And then we're gonna drop the pin in. The audience can see how we do this. Look.
That's smart.
See, we open it up.
Very smart.
Opened. Now we take our bracket here. This lives like this.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, we put a pin through the middle here. And I might have to open up a little more. Oh, this should work. Yeah, there you go. It's in. Now I come in with the hammer. Okay. I'll have to just push that down a little bit in there. But look, done. Hours saved. Thank you.
It's a miracle.
Thank you, brain. You finally worked. We've saved ourselves so much time and effort. Wow, this is a victory for us here, DP, because we really need one here.
It feels like we keep falling further and further behind, so this is good.
Well, I looked at this, I was like, well, there goes another day. We're into day 5, and we just did a set of, brake calipers and e-brakes here.
It's only day 4, PT. Don't get too far in.
No, I'm saying that's what would have happened. This would have gone into day 5. Yeah. So this, thankfully, will be good.
So you can see we've got the cable hooked up to the caliper here, and it's pretty ingenious. It's just hooked over the hook on this side and goes through the hook on the back side, held on with one of those typical, like, what are these clips called? I don't know, brake line clip kind of thing?
Sure, yeah.
And when you pull the cable, it pinches those together, which squeezes the pad on the rotor, which is a really cool, simple mechanical way to do it. So actually, why don't I go up there right now? But you can see right now, if I spin it, it's doing what it should do. And now if I go up there, I'll lock it on and you'll see how it works. Give it a rip. And should lock down good. So we have a functioning e-brake. It did take a little effort though. We had to do a little customization underneath.
Why don't we show people so they know? Because this is an AE86 setup, right?
It is, yes. So the length of these cables was actually a bit too short. So you can see there would have been like a clamp here that held it to the frame rail. We can't use that. But we are using the Celica's original e-brake cable, what would you call these, like mounting brackets, I guess you could say. Normally there's a little retainer that goes, that a bolt presses up against. Couldn't find those, so we just took a little aluminum block to do the same thing, but as you can see, it locks it in there really securely. And then up here, we did have to drill out the diameter slightly for where the cable clips into this equalizer, as it's called. Not a big deal to do that, but we had no way to really secure the cables up in this area. So what we did is we took a block of aluminum, tapped a couple of holes in it, P-clipped it to the brake lines, and then bolted the block to the chassis. And it actually works extremely well. It's very secure. It looks kind of ghetto, so we're gonna take it out and paint it black so you don't see it when you're under the car, but I don't expect to have any judges sliding under here with mirrors looking for things that are janky. So this works aesthetically. It doesn't bother me because I'm never gonna see it again. Yeah, this is a win because A, we made it work, and B, we finished a job today, everybody. It feels like this is the first time we finished a job in about 3 days. So
yeah, well,
man, it is almost day over though.
It is day over though, so holy crap.
We've got 45 minutes left. Let's finish another job in 45 minutes, Pete. What can we do really quickly? Well, we're going for the easy win on job number 2 of the day here, and that is changing the oil filter, because we forgot to do that when we filled the oil up. And we didn't have the right filter in, but we ordered the OE Denso filter in. So out goes the multi-fit.
Whoa.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow, it's leaking out of there too.
Yeah, as it should.
It's leaking out of all the holes. All right, I'll stop yapping and start plugging.
Yes.
But you guys...
Filter off, filter on, and we can cross that off the list.
It's a win.
While we're on this side here, I'm also gonna cross something off the list, and that is our oil pressure sensors. You can see we have an AEM unit here, and this is for the speed hut. And we don't wanna hard mount this to the engine. The idea is to remote mount it with a line like this. However, because this is a BSP fitting right here, the factory one was, that means I needed adapters. And unfortunately, it's kind of like an adapter into an adapter here. So the first thing I had to do was go to this BSP to 1/8 NPT. And now I can go to the 1/8 NPT to the -4 AN, I suppose that's what this would be, and then now I can screw this on and we'll be good to go here. I'm sure a BSP to -4 fitting exists. I did look on the internet, and they're not common. You can't just order it off of like McMaster Car or anywhere like that. It's probably a specialty item. It's got to exist somewhere, but this is the quick and easy solution for us right now. And that's kind of what we need right now. We kind of need to start working through jobs, and I'm not really too worried. This is just an extra fitting there. So. And here is our final setup. You can see a nice little P-clip on here holding everything in place. And the reason for doing this is the NVH from mounting these sensors on the engine does murder them very quickly. In worst case scenario, one of these fittings, if you had this like hard mounted into the engine, it can fail and crack off and then lose oil pressure, and it's bad news. So this is kind of the right way to do it. Remote mount it.
All right, that is the end of day 4, and now for the most satisfying part of the day. We get to cross a few things off the list, starting with the biggie, the e-brake cables. And I know you guys are probably thinking, why is that a biggie? Well, man, as we explained, there was a lot of challenges there, and that is a huge relief to get that in there and working, because now we have just like a nice OE brake, and I can park it on a hill if I want to. So huge win there. Pete also just did the oil pressure sensor deal there, so I'll cross that off. And
New oil filter right up below it, TP.
Ooh, the oil filter, it's true. And there was one more thing. Well, there was one more thing, wasn't there? I thought there was.
Jeez, did we just? No, we did something else.
We did.
Look,
Oh, the drive shaft. The drive shaft.
drive shaft. Wow.
Center carrier bearing and paint.
we're losing it here.
There you go. So that's 4 things off the list, PT. As a percentage of 42 items, we're 10% done this build, everybody. Woo! We are winning. So, man, tomorrow's day 5, and we're just gonna chip away some more. All right, wiper motor and assembly is in place, and wow, this wiper motor is really triggering me because it's filthy, still covered in like Arizona sand and dirt. It's the only thing in the engine bay we haven't really cleaned up nicely, so tempting to throw it in the vapor honer, but Pete is concerned, and rightly so, that maybe some of the slurry could get past the weather seal into the motor area, and you know, I've got exposed wiring and stuff here. Just not sure how safe it is to vapor hone something like this. So I might look to pick up another one from a Celica hoarder. In fact, if you have one that you're willing to sell me at a fair to cheap price, I wouldn't mind buying one, vapor honing it, and see what happens. And then if I ruin that one, we still have the original one as a backup. And we did some other cleanup in the engine bay too, starting with installing the catch can. And as you saw, we used these really cool little zip ties that says Heartbreaker on there, which I think is appropriate for Connie. I think she's a bit of a heartbreaker, and you can see we pulled them out of this little pouch, which has a bunch of them with, some of them say Fix You Later on it for the drift dudes, and some of them say Heartbreaker for the hard parkers, I guess. But these are from Import Bible, as is this shirt, which I think is really sweet. They sent us several of their designs, which, and that hat, by the way, people have been asking me about that hat, which I'm not wearing right now. But I think it's kind of like HKS inspired, at least to me, that's what I see when I look at that hat. It's got that kind of like color to it. So any of that stuff that you've seen is from Import Bible. So we'll put a link in the description to their website. They have lots of other cool accessories and stuff that we'll show you as this build progresses, because I think Connie's kind of like the perfect candidate to be dressed up in some cool like JDM type stuff from Import Bible. So go check them out. You also saw us do a spark plug change, and pulling out the ones that were in there, you'll notice one of these things is not like the other. We've got 3 OEM NGK iridiums, and then we've got one HKS M35i. I'm assuming the I means iridium as well. And they look otherwise identical, so it does make me wonder if HKS is rebranding NGK iridiums.
Man, it's some JDM dude just put it in, DP. That's what it is, to give you that one cylinder, that extra HKS 5 horsepower.
Oh, that's true. That's an extra 5 horsepower there.
Right, that's right.
Maybe I should put that one back in, although these have seen better days. In fact, one of them was a little oily, and we're hoping it's just because we turned the motor upside down to change the oil pan out, but
Please.
that's our hope. But what we really want to show you is this socket, spark plug socket from Milwaukee, which has a magnet in it, which I think is genius, because there's nothing more annoying than having like a worn out O-ring in there and having the spark plug fall out when you go to put it in the motor. Oops, falls on the ground. You just ruined your expensive iridium spark plug. Like, why has no one ever thought of that before, PT? That to me is just pure genius.
I know. Milwaukee always comes up with all of the best ideas, and we're always like, wow.
Yeah.
Where has this been?
Whoever their ideas people are right now, they are killing it. So really well done on that. All right, fellas, we are running out of time today, so that is a wrap on this episode. Thank you very much for watching. And in the next one, man, I think we might actually get this car fired up. We are ready to go as long as all the electronics are working as expected. We'll do a quick check on that. And if we're good to go, we're going to turn the key and just make sure that Beamsy 2.0 here is running and healthy and doesn't, throw a rod out the side of the block. So not to jinx it, but I think she's going to be fine. But we did see that bit of oil on the spark plug, so maybe a little worried about that. But we'll get that out of our heads as soon as we give this thing a test fire, and then we can move on to the very exciting job of attacking that very intimidating interior. So thanks again for watching, everyone, and we'll see you in the next one.